Welcome to Chine Days Roundtable 20. The Earth belongs to everyone. Sayonara, Klaus Schwab, and your You'll Own Nothing and Be Happy. I am Bruce Tatoris, moderating. The Earth belongs to everyone is not just our roundtable today. It was our original idea, self-evident for thousands of years after we got intelligent and started working together. Earth rights visionary Alanna Hartzok will further explain and tell us about her book by the same name. Paul Fitzgerald and Elizabeth Gould have written a proposal for world peace based on economic justice. You can read it online at valediction.net. Look for world peace in the banner. Also with us is Carol Brouillet, a monetary reform activist, because these questions must be addressed. What is money? Is life merely a commercial endeavor? And how do we create a world that works for everyone? But first, our host, who has published around 160 books in the past 20 years, books that question a lot of our official history, Chris Milligan.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. And again, thanks y'all for coming. We could all be spending our time doing something else, but it's very important that we continue this road to peace. And there's, lots of solutions out there. There's been lots of things done in the past that are very important. And, there is a way to walk down here. And, I'd like to just give a couple of quotes from John Fitzgerald Kennedy, because he went through a war, fought in a war, and then, was elected president of the United States and saw what was going on with the world and had to deal with the world. So a couple of words from Mr. Kennedy. Change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future. I look forward to an America where we are not afraid of grace and beauty, which will protect the beauty of our natural environment. We must face the fact that the United States is neither omnipotent nor omniscient, that we can not impose our will upon the other 94% of mankind, that we cannot right every wrong or reverse every adversity, and that therefore there cannot be an American solution to every world problem. All this will not be finished in the first 100 days, nor will it be finished in the first 1,000 days, nor even perhaps in our lifetime on this planet. But let us begin onwards to a better future.
Thank you, Chris. And now, Earth rights visionary, Alanna Hartzok.
I authored a book, which is a collection of 30 of my articles and essays under the title, The Earth Belongs to Everyone. And others of you liked that as a meme, which is how we've been using that theme. This book has anywhere from a short essay that's 6 paragraphs long called A Friend of Mine Bombed a Friend of Mine, True Story, to pretty extensive, well-referenced academic papers. And most everything has been published somewhere or the other, but I needed to show that I had a body of work, so I put it together in this book anthology of my writing. It did win a book award with a rather expansive 6-page review. And the book award is called The Radical Middle. So if you want to position my thought and maybe the thoughts of other of you here, you might like that phrase, radical middle. So with, it's a free PDF at the website is theiu.org. And you go into the resources to books, and then you'll see the free PDF in the book review. Okay, economics of war and peace. This is going to be 29 slides. I'm going to move rather quickly. So not so long ago, people lived in harmony with nature. We did not need the use of chemicals, poisons, altered genetics to grow and maintain our food supply. It's time to return to balance. So this is one of my favorite old photographs from the early 1900s from a World Expo. Liberty Bell with its crack, with Chief Little Bear pointing out the crack. And I like to say, we could not craft a metal bell that did not break. And we did not craft a democracy that has stood strong, and especially a democracy that addresses the wealth inequality problem. So there's a crack in our Liberty Bell. It's an iconic symbol of American independence. It was cast proclaiming liberty throughout the land until the inhabitants thereof. And this is a biblical reference from the book of Leviticus. And you shall consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land of all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you. And this scripture is a reference to the Jubilee year of ancient Israel, when all debts were to be canceled. And Carol will be talking about the money problem and the debt problem today. And each person has the right of return to land that was originally allocated in a just manner. So the Liberty Bell cracked on its arrival in Philadelphia shortly after being forged. In the image, native Chief Little Bear points to this crack as though reflecting upon the major flaw in the founding of democracy, the lack of economic human rights based on each person's birthright to the earth's land and natural resources, and to a money and banking system that enables fair trade without usury. The crack in the Liberty Bell, thus understood, has brought us to the point of gross wealth and power inequality, which is fast destroying the basic freedoms and liberties of the inhabitants of the United States of America. So this first chart shows a naturally just and harmonious society. Think of just a simple indigenous society here, not a complex industrial society, just simple. Naturally just and harmonious, everyone has fair access to the gifts of nature in order to procure their livelihood. It's a cycle. So you might think of these people have earth rights. They can touch nature, be in nature. There's no trespassing. There's no fee to pay to be there. But there's this problem of the rent leak and the privilege fund growing. So when people must pay rent for access to land, exploitation of labor begins. Because of the rent leak, people cannot get capital without borrowing from the privilege fund system and paying interest. Now, privilege means private law. So you might think of privatization of things that should be common. So look at the guns. So when there's a barrier to access to Mother Earth, to land and resources, and you have to pay for land and resource access, this is a form of rent, an economic rent. And then when your wages, which they do not keep up with the price of, say, housing and other commodities that we need, when the wages do not keep up because of a law that's an immutable law called the law of rent, that rent rises faster than wages, then in order to procure, say, a house, you have to borrow. And you have to go to now a private banking system and borrow with interest rates, compound interest. You might be paying 2 or 3 times more the cost of a house by the time you paid all the interest. So John Mohawk was a leading scholar and spokesman for the Six Nations Iroquois Confederacy, thinking in Indian utopian legacies. And he said that the problem of the modern world really began 500 years ago with the enclosures of land in England and throughout Europe. And this created then what we have is debt on a massive scale, and as the new serfdom. So this little cartoon shows usury. We have problem with usury on debts and taxes and usury on land. So those are the burdens that the average person's carrying, and you can see the mortgage company and the land and the business, all the corporate funny money of the corporations comes out of the land and money problems as the unearned income flows to the few. So who owns the world? These latter-day pharaohs, the planet owners, the richest 5% allow the rest of us to pay day after day for the right to live on their planet. And as we make them richer, they buy yet more of the planet for themselves and use their wealth and power to fight amongst themselves over what each possesses. Though, of course, it's actually us, we, the people, the ordinary people who have to fight and die in their wars. Bill Gates is now the biggest private owner of farmland in the United States. owns at least 242,000 acres with assets of more than 690 million. That's probably low guesstimate, but he's been rapidly buying up massive amounts of land. And he's just one example. I mean, Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway is in my small town near where I live. It's in small towns all over the world. Why is Berkshire Hathaway? What are they gaining from these small towns? Well, they're mining the land rent. They're speculating in land and they're buying up our housing stock so that the price of housing increases for everybody who lives here. So there are two ways to conquer and enslave a nation. One is by the sword, the other is by debt. We're looking at the both working together in this third chart. The privilege fund from this unearned income from rent and interest enables the war system. So this massive unearned income occurs in the hands of the few who want to further their wealth and power through domination. Through domination and control and expansion of other resources, they gain a great deal of control over the budget of the government and manage to direct public funds to the military-industrial complex, the armaments, and they get involved in foreign interventions to expand even further to conquer more land and resources, and using the money system as a mediator and increasingly getting we the people into debt for the whole military economy. Well, in these other areas, to quell the protests, so-called investors call for military intervention. Who are the investors? Those who want to make a killing in real estate. So the military, industrial, financial, intelligence, oil, i.e. all the natural resources complex. Let's hold them all together. There's several heads of the beast that we're dealing with. In our discussion of land and money, though, we want to get to the root problem. If you keep cutting off these heads, more heads seem to keep appearing. So we want to go down deep into these perennial wisdom teachings around fairly structuring the land tenure and the money system. Now, this guy's got to be one of the most evil thinkers ever created on Earth, our beloved Henry Kissinger. Depopulation should be the highest priority of foreign policy towards the third world, because the US economy will require large and increasing amounts of minerals from abroad, especially from less developed countries. And that is the underbelly of US foreign policy. And the CIA, which those of us studying JFK and the assassination, what happened to Kennedy, we know about the nefariousness of the CIA as doing all sorts of horrible things against the rule of we the people. So resource wars, 3 to 4 million have been killed just in the Congo since 1994 over gold, diamonds, coltan, copper, and other resources. Africa is a very resource-rich country, but its resources are not in the hands of the people. They are greatly in need of earth rights democracy. I'm not going to have time to certainly look at this, but this gives you a little scope of the US military presence overseas. The red dots are countries with military bases. Apparently there's about 800, or with access arrangement to military supplies with the US. And then the yellow dots are countries with other forms of military cooperation. People don't realize the footprint of our military in the world. I talked to a friend who was in the Army and had been in the Army for a very long time. And he just laughed at me when I said there were about 800 US military bases. He said there's only 4. That's because he doesn't know about these maps. He's embedded in the whole thing. He just knows about the major, big, giant military bases. He doesn't know about all these other ones. So US military presence and interventions in Asia, Pacific, and Africa. Again, you're not going to be able to read this, but this map's online, and all you need to do is do a web search for US military intervention and view a excellent documentary by Frank Durrell titled What I Learned About US Foreign Policy. And it will be a deep dive into this hegemonic militarization of the planet on behalf of the few owning, controlling, and gaining access to more land and resources. Again, just there's ways that they've put together charts like this to condense all this information that's contained in many books so that you can just get a really good overview of it. So Martin Luther King Jr. said, the greatest purveyor of violence in the world, my own government. I cannot be silent. And that Vietnam War speech that he gave was April 4th, wasn't it? He was assassinated 1 year to the day, on the day, same day, a year later, that he made his anti-Vietnam War speech and said that statement. Okay, so again, this is the same slide, the third chart. Just again, get into your brains that the guns, the violent points are around the land and money problem. Then a few get the position of privately appropriating unearned income from the land and money, and then the war economy is off and running. So some who understand the money problem more and some understand the land problem more. So the money problem, people say all wars are bankers' wars, and then others who look deeply into the land and resource war issue, as did Michael Clare, resource wars. Both need to be seen together. So Ramsey Clark, our former U.S. Attorney General, who recently passed, wonderful spokesman for peace and justice. We call ourselves the world's greatest democracy. We are absolutely a plutocracy. It's the most obvious thing in the world. Wealth governs this country, and wealth uses military violence to control the rest of the world as best it can. And we're responsible, and we will pay the price for it, meaning we, the people of the country. If we don't control our violence, if we don't control the effect of the symbol of our glorification of violence on our children and on the rest of the planet, then this human species is going to be the first to destroy itself completely. And that's the road the United States government has put it on. A quick little anecdote from something that happened to me. I was dropped into the Lutheran Theological Seminary in Gettysburg a couple of months ago. And they have a little museum there. So I thought, I guess I'll take a look at the museum. And the sign said free to military, free to active military. Otherwise, it was $12. This is at a Christian seminary. So I go to the desk and I say, I'm a Christian peacemaker. You letting military people get in free? May I get in free? And they say, well, this is a nonprofit. I said, well, I'm a nonprofit. I'm a Christian peacemaker. Can I get in free? And he started raising his voice towards me and getting quite perturbed. I asked, where's the president's office? He said, I don't know. So the land, I mean, that just shows you. And then I did go across the street to the library and found out that our wonderful colleague, Charles Avila in the Philippines, whose book, Ownership, Early Christian Teachings, was in the library. And that brings forward why the Judeo-Christian tradition is corrupted under the Roman Empire and why they support war rather than the few peace churches and Quakers who don't. Okay, I see someone's in the waiting room, Allison Snow. So the land and money problems are intertwined. Take a deep look at this. Most of our board games, you've got to look at the board that it's actually played on. And it usually represents earth. It usually represents land. So you see in chess, the adversarial battling back and forth, it's over territory. And there the money, dollars are sitting on top of the board, showing money as a mediator around this whole military problem of war. So we're about at our last slide, one of them. The fourth chart, why is it not moving? The fourth chart, very important. You notice the guns are gone, okay? Transforming this privilege fund with the resource rent fund, with what I like to call an earth rights democracy, a new form of democracy that gives us our democratic equal rights by birthright to Mother Earth, to the land and resources as our right by birthright. And so by fair sharing of the resources of the planet and by removing the usury from the money system, we can have a true peace economy. So the privilege fund is equitably returned to society by public collection of land and resource rents. Rents meaning the unearned income now privatized, which we need to make commons. And workers with their just economic opportunities restored can now accumulate capital through their own savings. And economic justice and abundance and peace are restored. Again, Martin Luther King Jr., true compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. It comes to see that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring. He got it. We need to understand that. It's not like just transferring funds from one hand to the other, trying to tax the rich to give the poor enough to survive. We're talking, and that is called redistributive justice, by the way. What we're talking about here today is redistributive justice. We want justice set upon fundamental fairness in the relationships and the land and resources and the money system. When you have that fairness, you don't have to worry about this gross wealth inequality. It just can't happen. It doesn't occur. And it's not theoretical what I'm talking about. We've traced it back thousands of years that harmonious societies have equitably addressed the land and money problems. When they fail to do so, they fall into crime and prisons and wars and poverty and wealth inequality. So why am I showing you robin nests? It's a very simple concept, actually, of access to Mother Nature, which the animal kingdom has. So parent birds, first, they find a location. So they find a free location that's suitable to build a nest. And they go out and about and they gather the resources and the straws, the sticks, and everything. I couldn't make a nest like that with my hands. I'm not that crafty. But a bird beak can make this incredible, perfect, sustainable, affordable housing for its bird family. And so they protect and they nurture. And when the birds hatch out, they go and they fly about and they get the seeds and the nuts and the worms and whatever they need, the food. So here you have food and shelter that birds can provide their bird families. Why the heck are human beings not able to provision the basics? Why the homelessness? Why the hunger? Why the poverty? Well, I'll tell you why. We don't have the land and money system set up properly. And when you don't have it, when you privatize that under an income, you have exactly what we have. So we know the direction, redistributive justice. The land, money, and tax systems are fairly established so that extreme wealth inequality is simply not possible. This combines freedom and fairness, gets us out of the left-right box to what we could maybe call a radical middle or a post-partisan politics. So thank you for listening. There you have it. And Carol's going to go deeper into the money problem.
Money reform activist, Carol Brouillet.
Just thank you so much, Alanna. These issues are completely intertwined. So back in the 90s, I became an activist after I watched the film JFK, which is one reason I met Paul and Liz, because we had a connection over that film. And I also started looking into the activities of the CIA that woke me up. I didn't realize the larger geopolitical problem, the war economy, and it was an incredible eye-opener to me. So that's what made me become an activist in the early 90s. And a friend gave me a little piece of paper, and it promoted a book called Debt Virus, a compelling solution to the world's debt problems by Dr. Jacqueron. And I went down the rabbit hole looking into money, how it's created, how it flows through society, and discovered that horrific as the military is in slaughtering and killing people all over the planet, in some ways, the monetary and economic system is even more deadly and has killed more people through impoverishment, hunger, lack of access to medicine, all sorts of problems. More people died because of our global economic situation than even the military. Although there was a legislature in New Zealand, Marilyn Waring, and she wrote a book, Who's Counting or Counting for Nothing, which looks at the entire global economic system. And like Alanna, she comes to the conclusion that we're living under a war economy. And one reason it is a war economy is because it doesn't recognize the priceless value of the earth, which does provide a home for all life. And nature, the generative abilities of women to give birth and raise and nurture kids, all the networks of cooperation and love to help raise children and create meaning in life and society. It just ignores the love economy, which is actually the bulk of the economy that we actually have. If you look at the word economy, it's like the care and running of a household from the Greek word. And so it ignores that tremendous value. And what it only sees is exchange or money. And that's what it measures. And the way the system is designed, especially with the UN system of accounting, is it has taken a British system of national accounts, which was the British system of national accounts and how to pay for the war, and expanded it into a global system. And it's imposed on every single country that has joined the United Nations. And so what that does is it only recognizes what can be measured, the money. And it doesn't recognize how harmful, how devastating the expenditures are, and whether it's for nuclear bombs. What's making the most money is the war economy. That is really the heart of our global system. It is a war economy. Getting back to the monetary system, this goes back thousands and thousands of years, as Alanna mentions. And this very heavy, monumental book by the late Stephen Zarlenga, who created the American Monetary Institute, is called The Lost Science of Money, the Mythology of Money, the Story of Power. And I think this really goes back to sort of the heart of the valediction, is looking at mystical imperialism and how these myths about reality are contrived, and they don't have anything to do with reality. It's really a reflection of the powerful forces which are trying to impose their worldview upon everyone in order to shore up their legitimacy and their power. And nowhere is that seen more clearly than when you start looking into the monetary system, because most people have no idea how money is created, how it flows through society. They just assume incorrectly that money is more like a public utility, a service, and that for some reason it's fair, and it's not. The inherent problem with our debt-based monetary system is that when money is created and it's loaned into existence, it's always impossible to pay back the loans. And so what happens is it continually funnels wealth and resources to a few, those who have the power of creating money. And this robs everyone else of their homes. In fact, we don't own a home, we rent. And if you look at the word mortgage, it comes from the French. Mort means death, and gage is a gamble. And it's a gamble with death, because you're risking your whole family's life if you have to borrow and put up your family's land in order to survive. If you aren't able to pay back the money, the family loses the land and they're just, forced into wage slavery or worse. But it's become normalized. People think, oh, it's normal to get a mortgage. This is the natural process. It's not. It's incredibly predatory. The way money is created, it's not fair. There's this book, Interest in Inflation-Free Money by Margaret Kennedy. And she notes that the way money is created, the hidden price of money, it's actually about half the cost of goods and services. People don't see it, but the fact that people have to borrow to get money in order to do business and buy homes and buy food in society, if we had an honest monetary system, a fair one, our money would have twice the value that it has today. But this is just one of the hidden costs. And going back to sort of the origins, we've seen this in empire and empire and empire over thousands and thousands of years. What happens is, as money is basically robbed from the many to the few through this mechanism. I mean, it can be a combination of brutal military force as well as through money. When you have a terrible concentration of wealth, where you have just 1 or 2% of the population controlling the vast amount of resources and wealth in any empire. What happens is they destroy their ecological base, and then the empire collapses. And this has happened time and time again. Unfortunately, right now, it's a global empire. And so what we are seeing is all of life is threatened. The oceans, the forests, our species, multiple species. We see there's more, we're losing species so quickly. It's almost the end of the Cenozoic age. We're having massive species extinction. And so it's a huge problem. It's not just confined to the United States. The United States has played a dominant role in economics for the last 100 years, but we're in a time of seismic change where the US dollar hegemony is about to collapse. China, the BRICS countries are going to introduce a new currency this summer, and we've already seen de-dollarization happening. And so we also see all these conflicts. Usually whenever there's a big shift in who controls the money, there's a lot of wars being fought. And we're seeing this play out with the proxy war in Ukraine. All this money is going to that war right now, and things are being increasingly destabilized. It doesn't have to be this way. That there have been times when rulers have created money for the benefit of their people without having the same sort of borrowing, usurious interest rates. And those good examples have been buried in history. They've been obliterated entirely. And so that's why Zarlenga wrote this book, is to say, hey, it doesn't have to be this way. We could actually have an honest, fair monetary system, which is for the benefit of people. And back about 100 years ago, we had what was called the Great Depression. And during that time, there was a depression not only in the United States, but also in Europe. And there was one little town in Wargl, Austria, that decided in order to turn things around, it would create a scrip, a currency, and use it as a relief fund for the poor, for the elderly, the disabled, and also to do public works like repair the roads that were the laughingstock of the country. And it created a currency to do that. And it was an economic miracle. The country, the town, Wargl, improved its economy so tremendously. It was thriving. All the roads were repaired. People were paying their taxes in advance. It was just doing incredibly well. 200 mayors from all over Austria wanted to learn the secret of Wargl's success, and they got together in order to understand how this currency worked, how they could recreate it. But it was such a threat to the national bank that they pressured the Austrian government to make that illegal. But the idea of that particular currency spread, and so there were actually hundreds of currencies developed in Canada, the United States, and Mexico to mimic Wargl's example. And the top economist of the day, Irving Fisher, he wrote an entire book about it called Stamp Script to help communities create their own currencies. Of course, FDR decided to do something else and create on a national scale a public works program, which kind of effectively killed all these vibrant possibilities of localization and creating positive local economies. But these are the kind of examples that most people just have no idea what they are or how they've come into existence, because those who create money have done a lot to help blind people as to how economics works, even, in fact, particularly within the economic schools. There's some radical political activists in the UK, and they have created positive money, and they've been directly trying to go to bankers to help enlighten bankers about what is money, how it's created, how it works, because even the bankers are pretty ignorant about the mechanics of money. Money also has changed because of technology. We used to have, gold and fractional reserve systems, where the monetary wizards of Florence and Europe realized that if you had gold-backed currency, you could store in your vault gold and just create these certificates that were more useful, that couldn't be stolen quite so easily. And you could print more certificates and loan them out at interest than the amount of gold that you had in your banks. Well, this was actually what has been done with the Federal Reserve System. So what has happened is we aren't using fractional reserve banking anymore. What has happened is, in the wake of, or actually at the beginning of the whole pandemic crisis, the government has been creating unlimited amount of money, not backed by anything. It's just churning out money, trillions and trillions of dollars, and it's spending it sort of willy-nilly to pursue other goals. And unfortunately, the people in control of producing all this money are enriching themselves and buying up everybody else's resources. And this is sort of in tandem with what the World Economic Forum has been pushing for, this the Great Reset. The World Economic Forum has partnered with the United Nations and partnering with the largest corporations throughout the world to implement 17 sustainable development goals. And if you look at these sustainable development goals, they're cloaked in nice, fluffy language, including, peace, environment, justice, equality, freedom, health, you name it. But if you look beneath the surface, what they are doing is they are constructing a surveillance state, or a panopticon of surveillance, in order to push a central bank digital currency. And these central bank digital currencies, they're in the beta testing right now. They've been thrust upon some of the most impoverished people in the world, the most desperate people. They're trying for a digital identity for every person, and also a kind of electronic money which can be turned on, it can be turned off, and it could expire in order to get people to spend money more quickly, but it could control almost every facet of human life. So this is sort of where monetary development is going right now. It's going to this complete digital enslavement. And I believe that if people understood what money is, how it works, we could create alternative systems which would not allow us to be enslaved by this system which is being constructed.
Do you have, Carol, one favorite resource of yours to share with us where people can better understand what is money?
I have a website. It's called communitycurrency.org. It's a portal to many resources on understanding money, and also community currencies, which actually create community, build community. There's a great book called Forgiving, which is a feminist criticism of exchange by Genevieve Vaughn, which looks at how cooperative giving economies are much more peaceful, and that exchange economies, which just look at, say, the numbers, have a tendency to develop towards hierarchy and more dominant empire building mechanisms. So I'm a great proponent of the love economy, the gift economy, and I believe Jimi Hendrix wisely said that when the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. So we don't need the World Economic Forum's Great Reset, but we do need a lot of courage to spark a great awakening from wherever we are, to move us from that dominant, violent system to one which strengthens life and supports community and justice.
Thank you so much. And just to stay on schedule,
Yes.
may I proudly introduce my friends, Paul Fitzgerald and Elizabeth Gould.
Thank you, Bruce. Okay, I'm going to definitely speed through this as fast as possible, but what I'm really focusing on is the title of this roundtable. And I want to get into this because I think it really is important in keeping your thoughts on what Carol and Alanna just presented. With this idea, the earth belongs to everyone, Sayonara, Klaus Schwab, and you'll own nothing and be happy, is really an attempt to break through the psychological gap that is actually between what I like to refer to as even the good guys, meaning that those of us all on the same side, we can't easily come together. And one of the things that triggered this understanding in me about this quote was in seeing a Reuters article that challenged the phrase, "You'll own nothing and be happy," which happened to be the title of our roundtable. The Reuters fact checkers claimed that the World Economic Forum does not have a stated goal to have people own nothing by 2030. Reuters not only states that the World Economic Forum does not have the stated goal, but that they actually state on their Agenda 30 a framework that outlines an aim to ensure all people have access to ownership. Okay, well, I found an article that I'm going to just read a few quotes from that will challenge that exact fact. What is part of this future? I think Carol certainly touched on these things, and I think Alanna did. But this is in relation to recognizing within our own, our friends and our family and the people that we're trying to get through to. Okay, and the reason that the idea, the earth belongs to everyone, which we know summarizes the whole hope that we have of getting people to ask the basic question, how is that possible? Because they're certainly not going to want to buy into, "You'll own nothing and be happy." So this is the article from 2022, a few quotes. It was called "New Insights on Klaus Schwab's You Will Own Nothing and Be Happy" by Leo Hornman. Okay. So this is actually what the World Economic Forum has for people, and by 2030, and wants to ensure that all people have access to ownership. So while you may technically still own a house, a car, an appliance, and a cell phone, in the emerging digital economy, will you really own it? By that, I mean, do you have full control on the usage of those products? If you have a deed or a receipt that says paid in full, are there special service fees required for the privilege of using that product? Even if there are no fees, does any outside entity have the ability to monitor or shut down whenever the device that you own is operated? How much of your personal data is being sent back and forth to the manufacturer? Okay, these are some of the obvious problems that we're dealing here with. And now the next phase is coming with vehicles. I think this is in 2026. The federal government has mandated that all vehicle manufacturers will include a remote kill switch in every vehicle that leaves the factory. These are some of the examples that we're dealing with I think what we're dealing with is the concept of ownership itself being actually changed. And it means something entirely different than what we consider it meaning. In the green economy being pushed directly by the World Economic Forum, governments will at some point implement quotas on energy uses. If you have exceeded your monthly allotment for water, electricity, citing the latest climate change regulations, they will automatically shut it off. New York City right now actually has a number per building, apparently, that is an indication of how much energy they're using. And so certain buildings now have low energy, low usage, they get praised, and the ones that have high usage are being, basically shamed. So this is the kind of things that are actually happening right now. And this is the same thing that's going to be happening with the electric cars. Tesla just warned its customers in Texas to limit the number of charges on their vehicles due to a heat wave. So this is the problem. We have to help people understand when they think about ownership and you are going to take something away, and then they're being promised that they're going to get something. So the word ownership itself has to be understood at the deepest level, because when you think you own it, this is why the World Economic Forum's Great Reset wants to usher in, as Carol laid out, the digital currency connected to the internet, because it's only through digitalization that the technocrats will be able to truly monitor and control all facets of human activity. Back in 1970, our favorite Zbigniew Brzezinski predicted this day would come in his book, Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Technotronic Era. His quote, "The technotronic era involves the gradual appearance of a more controlled society. Such a society would be dominated by elite, unrestrained by traditional values. Soon it will be possible to assert almost continuous surveillance over every citizen and maintain up-to-date, complete files containing even the most personal information about the citizen. These files will be subject to instantaneous retrieval by authorities." End of quote. We are certainly there now. And this is the world that these policies are being driven by the private sector. Everything is coming under the increasing control of big tech, big banks, and big pharma in collusion with an entrenched administrative state. And this is where we are now. Now, it turns out that the woman, Ida Auken, who did say in an interview that she is the one who wrote the article that produced the quote that was challenged by the Reuters notice, okay? She did actually present this at a World Economic Forum event. And she basically, actually in an interview, said she did it to try to create a dialogue so people could understand what was coming. So this was actually presented at a World Economic event. But what they didn't expect is that the quote was going to be picked up and used to attack the World Economic Forum. Rather than starting the dialogue they wanted, it actually created controversy. And I actually believe that's the reason that it's now being fact-checked by organizations like Reuters. So I think that what we need to do is be very alert to the confusion, the very, very easy confusion people will come to when they hear certain ideas and words. They have a pre-definition and they don't understand it's been completely changed. And we're hoping that this idea that our roundtable today was introduced on, the earth belongs to everyone versus you'll own nothing and be happy. The idea is that we get that out into the public and we try to get as many people as possible to look at these two offerings and say to them, which one do you want? Now, our bet is that they're going to want the earth belongs to everyone, and then they're going to ask the next question. How can that work? And that's what we have to do. We have to, a simple, straightforward, cut through the confusion. And once we get the door open to people's mind, the ability to be able to give them the information will begin to flow into them. That's it.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you. Paul, do you have
No.
comments, augmentation? All right.
Liz is my expert on this
No,
particular.
we want to give it over right away to the talk.
I think we
right?
really should talk
Yeah.
at this point.
Well, let me briefly review what's in the comments. Ed Dodson, in the classroom and in my own writing, I describe a Federal Reserve note, the money in our wallet, as a promise to pay, nothing in particular. Ed, do you want to expand on that in a minute or two?
The Federal Reserve established and it got authority to create this money printed out of thin air what is it? It's a note. It's debt money, as Carol talked about, and it doesn't really secure any kind of purchasing power because the value of our money changes hour to hour, not even day to day. So you get paid in the morning and you go to the store, and the money that you thought would buy X amount of groceries will buy X amount less, or maybe X amount more, because there's nothing backing the currency. I think what Carol alluded to is back in the 1600s, when the Bank of Amsterdam was created, the Bank of Amsterdam took in all the gold and other bullion that was circulating, as well as coinage circulating in the world, minted it into coinage of a standard weight and measure, and then said to depositors, all right, here's a receipt for your money. Now go exchange those receipts. And the system worked very well for several decades until they came up with the knowledge that not everyone shows up asking for their actual money at the same time. And so they got a little careless. They speculated in the tulip bulb market, and they made loans to the city of Amsterdam, which was a risky business. So we moved from full deposit money to fractional reserve money to today, no reserve money.
Thank you for clarifying. The one thing that I want to say is that the Charter for the United Nations talks about unalienable rights. Well, right now they're trying to pass this supranational treaty, which is not elected, which will turn those inalienable rights into human rights that could be turned on or turned off depending upon compliance. And this is the problem with the system that we're facing right now. It's totally unelected, top down, and it's destroying all the basic rights and putting them into little rights, which can be turned on or off, whether you're going to go along with it or not.
Lost in so much of the problems and the analysis is to remember, wait a second, we're supposed to be holding our representatives' feet to the fire, and they're supposed to be acting, implementing our voice. And when was the last time anybody felt that we impacted laws that were being passed? And so I'm very excited about your community, anything, Carol, but communitycurrency.org. John wrote, in addition to the 800 external military bases, the U.S. claims that it has 118 installations in Hawaii, counting as domestic, but the reality is Hawaii never lost its de jure. He references his book, Liberate Hawaii, documents that Hawaii never lost its de jure sovereignty, and there was no annexation, only seizure of control. Fascinating. John, you want to comment on that for literally about 60 seconds or so?
Sure. I'll keep it short. Carol has read the book, so I'll let her comment on it because, and I think Alanna has as well. I lived and I was very close to the Hawaiian activists and have been part of the resurgent Hawaiian sovereignty movement. Tens of thousands of people in Hawaii understand that the idea of Hawaii being annexed is utterly fraudulent. Outside of Hawaii, very few. So that's why I wrote the book, was to educate Americans about it.
John, I want to thank you right there, because it's such a fascinating door into something. I'm going to let people remember the title of your book, Liberate Hawaii by John Olsen, Olsen, for further interest. Rob Wheeler has written a bunch here. How to summarize it? Rob, you want to unmute and in about 60 seconds get us up to speed with the things you wrote?
Thank you. I've participated in the UN primarily in sustainable development processes for the last 25 years. And during that time, I've seen a lot of right-wing conservative people that say things about the United Nations that are just not at all true. And that gives me pause whenever claims are made to be cautionary about the things that are said. There's no question that corporate interests try to use the United Nations for its own advantage. For the recent climate summit conferences. 600 delegates of corporations aligned with the oil industry, fossil fuels, attended that conference. The same corporate interests are always trying to influence national governments. And of course, the UN is made up of national governments, though there are voices of the people that are involved as well, along with others.
So John, do you, I mean, sorry,
just-
Rob, do you want to address to Carol the particular questions to the claims that you had questions about?
No.
Well, I found I did a quick web search for the digital currency, and it's quite clear that there are many different governments and central banks, et cetera, that are doing experimenting with digital currency. So I think that's good that she brought it to our attention to look at that. The claim that human rights are being taken care of, I'm not aware that that's happening. The question about consumption and taxes or people being limited, we're at such a state of depleting of our natural resources and facing shortages across water, energy with the impact on the atmosphere, that I'm not so sure it's a bad thing that some people that use a lot of materials will somehow be limited, that there be some type of incentives to encourage people to use less and to be more aware of their impact on the climate, on the planet and the natural resource base.
Carol, did you have a chance to read Rob's questions in the chat, and do you have any rebuttal?
Well,
I don't think it's a debate. Go ahead.
the United Nations has partnered with businesses. They have partnered with the World Economic Forum. They used to claim that they were serving governments and people, but now it's more furthering corporate interests. And I think a lot of these institutions, the World Bank, the International Finance Corporation, they'll coat what they're doing in acceptable, nice, fluffy rhetoric, but the actuality is incredibly harsh. Like the World Bank and they teach corporations on how to loot third world countries. They sponsor projects which destroy the rainforests. So I have a greater skepticism as to their sustainable development goals. And then if you look at the people who are supposed to police the system, they've committed torture, they're corrupt, and they're the ones who are supposed to be guarding this. I'm Whitney Webb, who Chris has published her book about Jeffrey Epstein. She also has Unlimited Hangout, and I suggest everyone go to her website to look about the sustainable slavery goals and her.
We lost it.
Let Alanna speak.
Well,
Yeah,
very
okay.
good.
Thank you. I wanted to address both what Liz said and Rob's comments in chat about the concern that when you use more energy, you could get your energy cut off. Well, that does seem maybe arbitrary, very much Big Brother. And I want to present the same concern, though. We have to see that the environment has to be protected and that there are limited resources. How do we fairly share the land, the water, and so on? So the great earth rights economist Mason Gaffney, a wonderful colleague of many of us, passed at about age 100 not long ago. But Mason was a top-notch economist on this concern. And he would simply say, those who use more pay more, and pay a lot more. As it is now, it's like you use more, you use in bulk, and you actually pay less than those who are using less of limited resources. So from an earth rights resource rent perspective, it would be a transparent monitoring of the resource and energy use in order that those who are using more would pay so much more that they would be self-limiting. And the incentive would be for them to switch to renewable, because non-renewable energies would then become really too expensive. So you enable the fairness and the freedom there without some arbitrary group saying, here's the limit, we're cutting you off. So I think that okay, Liz has a comment on that.
Right. No, I totally agree with the concept. What I like to refer to is the people who are running the show. When we have corporations who are basically running the US government, it means that those regulations are not being applied fairly. And I do also think that when you look at, for instance, who is the largest polluter in the world, and their pollution doesn't count the US military. So
Right.
the imbalance has got to be corrected. Are we talking about average little people who use a little too much water, a little, I don't think the average person's usage on that level is precisely the problem. So many of the circumstances that people find themselves in, okay, they're already predetermined. And I think so we're dealing with different problems. And I think we have to focus on the major problem about the fact that we cannot trust the elites who are taking over at a global level all the institutions that are supposed to be controlled by sovereign nations. And these sovereign nations, in many cases, have been bought off. I think the US, Congress is pretty well documented having been bought off by corporations in many ways. So that's my point about, the world belongs to everyone, and, you will own nothing and be happy. I want to make it simple. I want to give people the clear understanding of what is represented by that statement versus what we are offering, okay, what your book is offering, Alanna. That's what we're trying to do, is get that attention and help people see that there is a lot of confusion and distortions that have been intentionally sort of put out in a way that people just get confused. And I think that is, so I don't dispute anything you're saying about the need for people to be conscious of what they're doing, for sure.
Very, very valuable. Chris, you have a.
Well, like I started off, with the Kennedy quote, change is the law of life. Okay. And, there's been a lot of blood and money spent to come to the point where we are in the United States of America. Okay. Where, we are supposed to be basically running our own affairs. Okay. Now, Eisenhower, he talked about the military industrial complex. If you look at some of the early drafts of that speech, they talk also about the congressional in that complex. And it's, because even before the ink was dry in our Constitution, the people that were elites at that time and trying to control things were trying to, looking at it and seeing how they could, control things. One of the early things that didn't get adopted, it was in the first 12, because there was actually 12 Bill of Rights, was that there should be more Congress people there should be a congressperson for every 30,000 people. Okay, so we need to realize that our hopes and dreams, okay, there are people that try and, modify them. It's just like, our founding fathers, a bunch of them tried to get rid of the slave issue. Okay, they weren't able to do that. Okay, so we have to continue to perfect this union. Today is Flag Day. Okay, now I'm a hippie, and one thing that came out of the hippies is a rainbow family. Okay, what did the rainbow family do? Okay, basically they went out in the middle of the forest, okay, on the 4th of July, and had a prayer circle for peace. Okay, because it's quite obvious that most people, they want to live a happy life. They want to raise their children and, and see them go forward into a future. How do we make change? Okay, well, in this country, we make change through votes. Now, there's some people say, well, I don't think we're going to be able to get the change that we want through votes. Well, then what are you going to do? You're going to get there with a gun and make people do what you want to do? Okay, so again, it's about education, getting people to understand the perfidy that we're in, okay? Because if you look at like money, okay, what did Ben Franklin and what did those guys do? They created script here, and the United States of America was really going very good guns. Okay, so what did Britain do? They says, well, no, you can't do that. Okay, so we went and had to have a revolution and created our own country. Okay, so again, it's really terrible what's been happening here, because we've had, elites such as, organized and secret societies, okay, then have then done psychological warfare and heavy propaganda, okay, to get people into little camps, fighting each other, all kinds of things, and to be fearful. There's no really reason to be fearful about the future, okay? And and digital currency is just a thing, just like anything. It's not evil, it's not bad, okay? And actually, when you look at it right now, most of our money is digital, okay? Most of the money is just moved in little blips on computers. We need to look at these things and make them for better, okay? And again, we need to look at the past to see what other people did, like the Indians, okay? Like the Jewish folks had a thing called Jubilee. Okay, why did they have Jubilee? Because they saw imbalance and they tried to bring things more into balance. So again, we don't need to be scared of things. We need to understand them and just go forward.
And if you're host, or if Alanna is still host, could you check if Carol is trying to return to the meeting, please?
No.
And
No.
thank you. And Alanna, you've had a digital hand up, speaking of digital things, because there's a lot in the chat.
The
I could
sovereignty
cover.
issue. I wrote a little paper a long time ago called Sovereignty, World Order, and the Earth Rights Imperative. And certainly we need the individual to be sovereign. We need the individual human rights and the freedoms of our individuality. The sovereignty, the borders of the nation state have usually been formed by some sort of war and conflict. There is a need for global governance. The Earth is 2/3 ocean. The Earth is 2/3 ocean, so we need to monitor and fairly share the oceans. The law of the seas is international law that needs to be enforced. We need international law to monitor the environmental issues and to remedy them. So I think personally, it's important to look at a strong need for decentralization, what is properly local power and control, and we can match this up with taxation policy, with resource rent domains, so the localities would collect their taxes from the surface land rent, and then you have regional levels of water and natural resources, which would collect a large amount of the unearned income, and then to the national. But then some nations are very large and some are very tiny. So there needs to be an equitable distribution around the resources worldwide, which a global trusteeship council at the UN, people have been calling for that to become a global resource agency for environmental monitoring and to collect the unearned income from the global commons. Some of us are working now with Equinox Earth Day. John McConnell's the founder idea, and that's the peace bell rung every year at the United Nations. And he's very much along this lines of the same thing.
Alanna,
Sending his unearned income to rent. Yeah, too long. Local to global. So just to say, we need to go much deeper in this issue.
Yeah, and I want to start to summarize some things and still get as many voices who haven't been heard and are patiently waiting. I'm gonna pivot to Diane Perlman, invite you to unmute and share for just a minute or two, Diane, and then I'll see if I can hit these folks who did write robust things in the chat. Diane, thank you.
Okay, over the weekend, I was at the Disclosure 2.0 conference with Stephen Greer. This was all new to me. And there was a film called The Lost Century and How to Reclaim It. And basically, there are all these inventions to have like free energy of devices that the patent office has suppressed. It could solve all these problems and eventually. So I'll put it in the.
Well, thanks. I watched almost all of that live stream the other day, and I highly recommend it. But I want to focus our dwindling minutes here to kind of summarize the major topics that have been.
I just want to
that
say
have
that
been
the earth belongs to, that it solves the problem of of poverty and energy, and that the lost technology, that there's technology that they're trying to resurrect. So it's not unrelated. I'm not talking about ETs. I'm talking about solution to the problem, possibly within 20 years.
Did you catch a website to refer us to?
All right, I will.
Oh, I thought maybe you haven't, but I know it's Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project, and folks
And then
could.
it's the lost century, all these inventions that would solve
Yeah.
all these problems.
Was that his documentary, The Lost Century?
Yeah, by Michael Mazzoli. Yeah.
Just want to remind folks that when you read Paul and Liz's peace proposal at valediction.net and get the free PDF of Alanna's book, The Earth Belongs to Everyone, at theiu.org, theiu.org, and go to Carol's site, communitycurrency.org, and review it over time going forward. It'll help consolidate and make sense out of. Carol, welcome back. What final thoughts have you for us?
I think there are solutions out there.
You held up a couple of books related to the different communities that had tried individual currencies. One of them seemed to have a map of the United States on the cover with a bunch of dots, but I don't think you said the title. I thought maybe you wanted to share that real quick.
This was just an example. It's called Standard Catalog of Depression Script of the United States, the 1930s, including Canada and Mexico. But I just wanted people to know that whenever the currencies collapse, people reinvent money. It happens all the time. I mean, that's how one reason for the Revolutionary War. The colonies tried a lot of different monetary experiments, and some were quite successful. And it's when England tried to shut them down that we had the Revolutionary War.
But just that point gives so much hope. It's not the end of the world of like, oh no, Coke is gone and Pepsi's gone. I'll never have soda again. Well, hold on, Bruce. Unions make soda when they want to.
Right.
People make mediums of exchange when they need to. Alanna, what final
Okay.
departing thoughts and blessings?
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. You know, there really is a growing consensus around this land and money problems and what to do about it. Very core to creating a fair and free society and economy. So I just want to say, in addition to the websites Bruce already brought attention to and others have, Ellen Brown's here with us today. Hi, Ellen. Ellen's founder of the Public Banking Institute. Go to that website, join in with their effort. They are working for implementation. Our International Union for Land Value Tax, and we have one of our board members, Emer Osukura, here. She's in Ireland, working for land value tax. We got to move from just these bright ideas to now it's another gear to move and join to implement policy. Detroit, Michigan is moving towards land value tax. The mayor and the governor of Michigan is all for it. It's coming out of major news now. The Public Banking Institute has networks all around the country, as do the land value tax movement through Common Ground USA and our International Union for Land Value Tax. So please, if you're inspired, if you see the truth and the land and money issues presented today, please take it that next step and join in and get active to implement it, because there's nobody else going to do it but we, the people who are waking up to these problems and solutions. So I look forward to working with everybody here today and continuing the conversation, and also moving into the activist implementation domain. So thank you, sponsors Trine Day and moderator Bruce, and this has been great.
Paul Fitzgerald and Elizabeth Gould.
Liz. Well, I'm going to repeat myself. Okay. The earth belongs to everyone. Sayonara, Klaus Schwab, and you'll own nothing and be happy. We really need to make that the mantra. We've got to get that simple, straightforward idea out there. It's got to be a mantra. It's got to be quick and easy. People take it in, and then they ask the question, how can the earth belong to everyone? That's when you can download. We've got to get that marketing out there. And that's the step. The ideas we're talking about here are fantastic, but that step getting the people, the masses of people onto this to help us.
Well, I really think that people have to, look in the mirror and say, what kind of world do I want to live in? I mean, so many times, it's on a regular basis. We're all operating at different levels, thousands of different levels, and that's being managed. I mean, by the elites, and they know how to manage it, and they've been managing it, and that's our whole story goes back. It goes back 1,000 years, or perhaps even earlier than that. That's the point of why we wrote our books and why we got involved with Afghanistan and discovered the depth of this understanding. And I mean, if there's anybody on the face of the earth that is independent thinking and acting, it's the Afghans. You can't tell them. What's the expression, Liz? You can take an Afghan to hell with kindness. You can't get them to heaven with force. And I think if we were more like that and a little bit more skeptical about the attitudes of our elite leadership, we wouldn't be having so many problems consistently when we know what the problem is and we know what the solutions are, that we could all work together, and we're all willing to do that. But we are turned against each other. I'm horrified by what I see in the news today, in the Boston Globe as an example. I mean, the manipulation of these things. So be aware of that you're always being tugged at from one way or another for somebody's special interest and not your own. So that's my 2 cents today.
The Earth Rights teaching, for instance, that Alanna gave, and that distribution of money, to me is a muscular way to implement America's founding ideals. All people are created equal and are endowed with inalienable rights, and we get to dictate to our representatives. They have to implement our will and the negotiation and compromise that entails. And Carol, thank you for holding that up, because it's hand in hand with this concept of a love economy versus the war economy, which echoes what Paul just said. We're at each other's throats, and we've got to be, with kindness, we can create solutions that do create a world that works for everyone, as Alanna often says. And the man who made all this possible, Trine publisher, Chris Milligan.
Thank you, Bruce. I want to just end with another quote from JFK. We stand as we have always stood from our earliest beginnings, for the independence and equality of all nations. This nation was born of revolution and raised in freedom, and we do not intend to leave an open road for despotism. Onwards to a better future.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Wait, Chris, don't hit anything, Chris. Everyone go to the bottom of that chat. Go to those 3 dots. Hit that save chat one more time to catch any last wonderful contribution to the chat. 5 seconds for them to finish doing that. 4, 3, 2. See you next month.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.